If you've ever visited Indiana, you'll understand that you see that I'm wearing a sweatshirt now. Yesterday it was like 75 degrees. Woke up this morning, 39 degrees of not warm madness. But it's not going to stop us. Got bunches to do here. As you can see, the great pumpkin's on its side. We're going to work on getting that prepped and painted. I'm going to go over the process, what it takes, what you do, and how to handle that. Now, I know it's the underbody, but it still kind of holds on to what techniques, what you should do for doing the outside body shell. What better place to practice than on the underside of the car? And as you see behind me here, I got the subframe all strung up, hung up, and ready to be painted too, because we got that welded up last time go around. And of course, if you haven't seen the whole video on this whole car completely coming apart in this garage, I'm gonna put a little playlist up somewhere up here. Hit the button, you can start from video number 1 and get all the way up to speed and see where we're at today. So every single last bit of this car, for the most part, has been put on here on the old YouTubes, but nonetheless, let's get this thing started. First, we're going to start with what kind of paint I actually use. Got it sitting right over here. Now, previously, I painted a lot of the body panels because I used 2 different kinds of epoxy primer. Exterior body panels, then say it's like underbody parts, like the control arm sitting here, the underbody, or even the subframe. I don't use the same primers, mostly because, well, this stuff is expensive. It is fantastic stuff. I've used it for years. Everyone has their opinions, of course. Now, keep that in mind. But PPG products, that's stuff that I like. This is stuff I'm going to use like on the exterior body panels. There's a lead-free primer. They also come in different colors. So if you get down to your sealer coat, you can reduce a little bit of acetone and use it for your sealer coat. And you get like a black one, gray, white. They have red. They have multiple colors of the actual epoxy primer. So you match up what's underneath, what you're going to put on top. So if I'm painting that car black, I'm going to use the black epoxy primer. I'm painting the car white like I did the Transmarawado. I use the, I think it's DP40 is the white. I used it for that. Now, here's what I use on the underbody of the car, like this stuff here. It is still an epoxy primer. Transtar brand 6131 is the part number. Now, of course, it's not nearly as expensive. I think it's about, you can buy 4 of these compared to 1 of those. But again, I'd love to use this on the entire car, but I would go broke. And we're talking about the underbody. It still has to look nice, but let's be honest, this is going to work fine. I've used it for multiple cars and I've had great results. Again, you may have your own opinion. Let me know all about it down here in the bottom in the comments and tell me what you think of this or this. And I'd like to hear your feedback, but this is stuff that I've used for years and it seems to work really good. And like I said, I like to do things on a bit of a budget. But what we need to do though, of course, got the car sitting up on its side, so I built this little flipper doohickey thingy so that I don't have to climb around on my back and try to paint this thing. Now, I've come through and buffed some of the wells down. They actually kind of buzz through a little bit. Not too bad, but obviously very dusty out here. But this entire car is this black paint here. Now, if it was the outside body panels, I strip every single last bit of that off. That's why I had them sandblast all this metal. I don't like this stuff as a good foundation. It's meant to be where you can paint on top, scuff and shoot, but if it's the outside panels, again, say it again, I don't leave it. But on the underbody, I feel it's sufficient, it's okay, and will work. So we're gonna actually work on scuffing all of this. And any place where I had some welds, they actually buffed down okay. These ones look okay, but I'll clean up some of the welds and dress some of the welds. But other than that, I just need to scuff this entire surface either with a Scotch-Brite pad or something like a 320 grit sandpaper, and that'll get everything all cleaned up and ready to go, because I have a little bit of overspray when I paint the top, so I need to get some of that overspray off to get down to a nice base. If not, it might lift the paint off of here. So I'll spend a few hours probably sanding this. Probably won't drag you along for that entire bit or journey, but I need to get from here back. And what I'll do is this line here is a beautiful line to tape from. So I'm going to paint from here back. Hopefully today is my goal. Then once I get the car off of the car flipper doohickey, I'll put it up on jack stands sitting about here. Then I paint from here up. So that way I got kind of a divider line, so I don't have to worry about trying to blend or fill or somehow, basically mask the idea that I painted it 2 separate times. Like I said, it's a perfect break line for a tape line. So anyway, let's get the thing sanded down, get things prepped up and ready to paint, and I'll show you how to get this thing painted. Unfortunately, you get to do the time-lapse version of 2.5 hours of wearing your fingertips out of hand sanding, or you say Scotch-Brite pad, scuffing this entire thing. I used the DA with 320 to knock down all the flat spots that I possibly could, so that's all nice and good. liking how that went together. Now we're going to hit this with the epoxy primer, full strength. So it's fine to put direct over bare metal, but technically you're supposed to wipe it down with acid. But again, we're doing the underbody, so I'm going to skip that step. Just don't tell anybody. Now what we're also going to do, I got some seam sealer. I'm going to go ahead and hit the seams here in the wheel wells, fill in the gaps here with a little bit of seam sealer. And I'll probably do this seam, what's exposed, and do the same thing on the bottom. We'll go ahead and hit the inside of the quarter panels here too with a little bit of a seam sealer. And that's the only parts that I'm going to seam seal. I'm kind of on the fence whether I like that stuff, doing it on the bottom, because it holds water in just as much as it holds it out. And again, these cars aren't going to see the weather like they used to. And if they did, well, guess what? They rust like they did. So I'm just going to do those little certain areas there to keep water out, because you are going to drive this thing once in a while in the rain. So you don't want water slinging in and getting into the trunk. And then back here is just a good practice to keep some of the stuff from getting up inside there. So going to take care of those areas, and then we'll get to painting. I suppose I probably could have showed you, but here's my seam sealing. Just enough to fill in the gap. And I get carried away with that stuff. It does the job. It does it, keep crud and dirt out. So just enough, like I said, to fill in the space that might be between them. Keeps anything from wicking in between the two panels. So at this point, time to wipe this thing all down with a, I usually call them like a tack cloth. Wipe off any last bits of dust to get you a little better finish. So and then I'm gonna start spray painting. Here we are, all ready to go ahead and put a coat of epoxy primer on. Something else I forgot to mention, when doing seam sealing, you're not supposed to put over bare metal. As you can tell, this has already been primed, so keep that in mind. I forgot to tell you that little important detail. So nonetheless, that's all done. Let's get some paint mixed up and change this thing's color. Now I use these for mixing up my paint because it gives you all the ratios, like 1:1, 2:1, or whatever your paint might be. Now of course this is pretty simple. They put the instructions on the can. So this epoxy primer happens to be a 1:1. You got your primer, then activator. And actually all you gotta do is mix one part and one part. Now the question kind of becomes, how much to make? Yeah, exactly. Just about enough of what you need. I normally go probably about waste one part of the primer, one part of the catalyst, and we'll see how far that goes, because it can always mix up a little bit more, so it's not that big a deal. So I'm gonna pop that open, strain out the chunks, because this can is kind of old, so it probably has some debris in it. So trying to keep as much dirt out as possible. Most of your paint supplier guys will give you a handful of these anyway, and I buy these online from the old eBay special stuff there. So they're pretty inexpensive, but you can actually clean these out and reuse them too, but I typically don't. So let's get a little bit mixed up here. Put 1 and 1, stir it up. Let's get it there and see if we can't make this happen. Okay, here we go. All pretty in one color. Now that's all epoxy primer. Now that's going to take about an hour. I'll let that sit to actually cure. Then I'm going to put a semi-gloss finish on all this, but I'd say it looks pretty good for just a primer. And of course, we're talking about the underbody of the car. So now you can see how that's done. Like I said, what we'll do later though, I only paint it up to that line. And what we'll do is we'll finish the firewall once we get it back on the ground. So that part's ready to go. Now I need to go ahead and just get that subframe all primed so we can paint it black today too. Frame all pretty, painted, epoxy sealed up, so that should help prevent some more rust. Now I don't do the powder coating thing. I guess a popular solution for this, but I don't know. I just like painting them, I suppose, but nothing wrong with powder coating. But put the jack stands down here, get me a little height, and I just tie it to the garage door. I'm kind of balancing that weight on the jack stand. It's pretty stable, but I guess use caution. Looks pretty good. I'm gonna give this probably 20 or 30 minutes to dry a little bit more, and then I'll go ahead and put our semi-gloss paint on here. And that's actually ready to go ahead and paint now, but I think I'm gonna take me an OMD break and we'll be right back. I got this thing sitting for about an hour now. It's actually dry to the touch. It actually feels pretty nice. I don't want to touch it up too much, but you get the idea. That's ready to go ahead and put our top coat on, same as our subframe. It's actually ready to go to all pretty and sealed up. I'm gonna try something I haven't used before. This may be epic fail, hopefully good, but it's a semi-gloss, or satin, I guess I actually say, chassis paint. Summit provides this to me, pretty reasonable price. I probably should give you a bit of a discount seeing how the can came dented, but that's okay. It's a 1-to-1 mix, same as our epoxy primer. So I'm gonna mix up some of this and try to get that all painted black. We'll get the differential painted and the frame. So hopefully get these all three squared away today. It's warmed up enough now, been long enough that I got to ditch my sweatshirt. So let's see how this is gonna go. I bet you'd like to see what that looks like, because, well, I do too. Check this out. Now, that's actually shinier than it's going to be once it dries. Laid out pretty decent. Hopefully when it flashes off, more of a satin finish, but for an underbody of a car, that should work very nice. This paint, actually, that's one coat. You watch him paint that. It covers very nice. That stuff's not all that expensive, so I'm going to tell you what. As long as it dries and looks good, I plan to use that stuff again. But again, we still have to do the differential and then the subframe. Then I'm gonna call it quits for today. Well, so there you have it. All underbody painted pretty and shiny, rear end just the same, and the subframe. Now I'm hoping when that dries all the way, it kind of loses a little bit of its shine. It's actually not quite satin in my opinion, but even if it stays that way, it doesn't look bad, just not what the look I was going for. So maybe check back on that in a couple hours, or on the next episode, I'll get you back in here and check it out. But I've had enough fun for today. I gotta clean up a little bit and kind of find a way to move the frame so I can get the old Blackbird back in the garage, because I don't necessarily want to leave that thing outside. I haven't finished cleaning up the rest of my toys, but nonetheless, underbody's painted, subframe's done, rear end's done. Now we can actually start assembling the big model car in the garage. We're gonna put the drivetrain together, suspension, disc brake conversion. So I got lots more videos heading your way. So I hope you find some of the stuff helpful, useful, or any good tips or anything like that. And of course, anything you have questions on or like to see, let me know just the same. So nonetheless, I'm gonna clean up a little bit, guys, here, and we'll catch you next time.